He is a former student athlete who had a promising future ahead of him. A simple trip to the dentist sent his life into a direction no one had suspected. A college wrestling career took a backseat to his opiate addiction. Doing whatever he needed to feed his addiction, he completely abandoned his moral compass, doing whatever he needed to do to find the next one. After a 7-year battle with opiates, he finally made the call for help and hasn't looked back. Since finding recovery, he has been certified as a recovery coach, certified peer recovery specialist, and has trained with world-renowned motivational speaker Les Brown. It is his mission to share his story with young people and attempt to educate them on the danger of drug abuse. Ladies and gentlemen, Philip O'Hara.
Hi, Farookh. How are you? Thank you for having me. How's it going?
Thank you very much, Philip. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much for taking your time and coming for this program. I know that you were on the road right now and you parked your car and you made your time to attend this show. Thanks a lot. Philip, you have gone through ups and downs in your life. You've gone up, then you came down like into a valley, then again you've gone up. I would like to speak about while you were on the peak season, while you were young as an athlete, you were a student, and you had a bright future at that time. And just take me through that particular life of yours. What were you doing? What was your specialty? What type of sports you were practicing, and all those things. Take me to that particular life of yours.
So, at an early age, I really didn't, not that I didn't do well in school, it just, school wasn't really, didn't really intrigue me very much. So I always kind of just messed around in school, and I found some outside of school stuff that I really excelled in. And around 8, my mom and I saw this commercial for Screen Test USA, and it was a modeling agency. Okay. So we went on this interview, and they took some headshots, and you know, we started going into Manhattan. Me and my mom started going into Manhattan. We started going on these modeling auditions, and I got my first print ad on a Connect box, somewhere around like 1996.
Okay.
And then after that, I was on a Nickelodeon commercial. I was an extra in The Guiding Light. There was a movie, Analyze This, with Robert De Niro and Billy Crystal. I was down to me and one other kid to be Billy Crystal's son. I didn't really practice my lines that much, and I didn't get it. And then in 7th grade, I got my big break. I went on an audition for Monster.com, and I got the part. And we filmed this commercial on the tram in Manhattan. That goes to Roosevelt Island. So if you've ever seen the movie Spider-Man, the tram that goes down in the water that he catches, it's actually that tram. So we filmed this Monster.com commercial, and after we film it, I find out that it's going to be a Super Bowl commercial. And in 1999, John Elway won with the Denver Broncos on the Super Bowl, and I was in a commercial that was a part of that Super Bowl. Wow. And the newspapers came to my house, the news crew came to my house, and it was really cool. It was a really cool experience. Right now, that commercial is top 10 all-time impact of a Super Bowl commercial. It launched Monster.com into this giant job search industry search engine, and so the last year I saw it was in the top 10 as far as most powerful Super Bowl commercials, which is a huge honor.
Absolutely. And then after how many years, still it's on the same level? It's been now, for example, around about 20 years now.
Yeah, 1999. Yeah, it's close to 20. Yeah, wow. Yeah, 20 years ago.
Yeah, 20 years ago.
So, and then I did a Dell commercial after that, and at that point, it was coming around to be freshman year. I would say, getting a little burnt out with all the auditions and going to Manhattan all the time. Yeah. Kind of losing interest in doing it. And then my freshman year, I ran into this guy in the hallway, and he looked at me and he asked me how much I weighed, and he said, "You're going to wrestle." And I was like, oh, okay, I'll wrestle. And that was Coach Nooch.
Okay.
And so I began wrestling my freshman year, and that was it. I was completely done with the whole acting and modeling, and I just wanted to be a kid again. And I got into wrestling, and I excelled really well. Baseball, I was never good at. Football, I was good at, but I was too small. Basketball, I just so bad at basketball. And finally, I found a sport that I excelled in. You know, it goes by weight class. You know, so I was wrestling people my size, and I excelled. I went 13-3 my freshman year, and then my sophomore year, I couldn't crack the lineup, and I was on JV. I went 23-1 on JV. I won an outstanding wrestling award. I won the biggest JV tournament in the state, and then by my junior year, I had made the lineup. We won a state championship. I bumped up a weight class that night. And I won in double overtime, and it was kind of like one of those matches that decided the match overall. So it was, you know, one of the biggest victories of my life. I took second in the district that year. My senior year, I ended up winning the district, and towards the end of that season, I had a college recruiter come up to me and ask me if I wanted to wrestle in college. At that point, college wasn't really a thought for me. I never enjoyed school, so I just thought I would join some type of trade union. But this guy was interested in me wrestling at his college, so I changed some prerequisite classes around, and somehow, miraculously, I scored 1,000 on my SATs, and I got into college, and I was recruited to wrestle at Hunter College in Manhattan. And this is kind of where my life, I guess, took a turn. And I didn't do too well at college, and I kind of failed out. If you want to go backwards a little bit in my story about, you know, where I kind of started to veer off, around sophomore year, I got my tooth pulled, and I left the doctor that day with a prescription of painkillers. And I took this painkiller before wrestling practice. And now what I learned through treatment and through recovery is that my body has a physical allergy to drugs and alcohol. So a normal person, if they have a surgery and they take a Percocet, a painkiller, any type of opioid, they usually feel tired, nauseous, and they want to go to sleep. But my body has this allergy. And when I take an opioid, I get wide awake. It stimulates me. I get more flexible. I have more endurance. I could run faster. So when I left that dentist that day and I went to wrestling practice and I took that painkiller, I had the best practice of my life. There was just no stopping me. And that was a positive experience. You know, we're told in school drugs are bad. You know, stay away from drugs. But they don't tell you that drugs make you feel good. So when I took that first painkiller and it felt good, I kind of thought everything they were telling me about drugs in school was a lie. Because this obviously isn't bad. It makes me feel good and I can wrestle better. So what are they talking about? So, you know, all the fear of drugs kind of went out the window. And I kind of piqued my interest. That state championship match that I won my junior year, I took 2 Percocet before that match. So, you know, I won in double overtime. I had the endurance to wrestle through double overtime, but I had it because I was, you know, on an opiate. So I actually won a state championship for my team high. And at that point in my life, drugs weren't consuming my life. It was just kind of something I did for fun, and it was here and there. I got to college, and, you know, drinking kind of took off, and partying kind of took off. And then when I failed out, I ended up back in my hometown, really isolated from all my friends were gone away at school. I was home by myself. I'd had no purpose, right? We know now how important it is to find your purpose and go after it. So I really was home and kind of lost. And that's when I really started to dabble in more drinking and more smoking pot and more pills. And with that came a lot of I became a drug dealer. To be blunt with you, I began selling drugs, and that was my purpose for a long time. I saw my identity as a drug dealer, and I kind of really abandoned my moral compass. You know, that little boy that my mom took on commercial auditions and did print ads, and you know, I kind of really abandoned all that, and I went full force in this wrong direction. And I really didn't have anybody there telling me, you know, I just kind of went. And so, not to give you a long war story, but from around 21 to 26, it was every day was, you know, waking up to do something illegal to make money or some type of hustle. And that's when, you know, I started dabbling in steroids, and it got really bad really quick. Before I knew it, I was getting followed by some law enforcement agencies, and I was really looking at going away and doing some time for what I was doing. And that's when at 26 I kind of tried to change, right? And now you talked about
what made you change. What was the reason that made you change?
So I was driving around, and I was getting followed by the cops, and I knew it. They were following me in an unmarked car, and I was very paranoid when I was on drugs, as a lot of people on drugs are. And I spotted the car, and he followed me for, you know, the whole day, and then I got followed the next day, and I knew that I was getting followed, and I knew I was getting investigated. So I kind of left the area. I made a phone call to my wrestling coach, who has been a mentor in my life since he came into my life. And I had to call him and say, you know, I think I'm in a lot of trouble. And, you know, he said, Phil, you know, you're better than this. You know, we didn't raise you to be what you are right now. You know, I've heard through the grapevine of what you've been doing, and, you know, what do you want to do to change? So I went to a detox facility. And I went and lived with my coach for a few months, and I waited till everything kind of blew over. My lawyer pretty much said that, you know, congratulations, God gave you a get out of jail free card. Use it to the best of your ability. And so what I noticed in my life is I've hit these bottoms, and then when you hit a bottom, you know, I change for a period of time, and when I hit that bottom, I do a little bit better. And then I don't do the work to continue my recovery. And, you know, I think I could, you know, I end up relapsing. And I start my nosedive again, except every time that I relapsed in my story, the bottom was here, then the bottom was here. And then by the end of it at 28, my bottom was so low, so low. So I hit my first bottom, and then I hit my second bottom, which is when I was with Coach, and I go to this detox, and I stop selling drugs, but I don't treat what's wrong with me. And eventually I relapse, and that's when I began using heroin, because I couldn't afford opiates, and I couldn't afford pills anymore. And I began using heroin from 26 to 28, and it was just like I said in the beginning, you know, drugs were fun. You know, they made me feel good. But those last 2 years, it was no longer fun. It was driving to some of the worst cities in the country, and buying drugs off of some of the most well-known gangs in the world. And it got really scary. And then finally, 28 years old, I overdosed. And that's kind of when my life, you know, that's when God really came into my life. I made a phone call to my friend Richie Bryant, and he got me a scholarship into Amethyst Recovery Center down in Port St. Lucie, Florida. And that's when God really touched me. I believe that night when I overdosed. So I ended up in a treatment center, and you know, they have all these different treatment modalities, right? They have, you know, trauma-based track, the faith-based track, the 12-step based track, and I took part in all those tracks. But on the way home from the center, we were in the van, and one of the guys in the van played Les Brown over the driver. The driver had a cell phone, and they plugged the aux cord in the van. And he played this. It was actually a compilation of motivational speeches. So it was Les Brown, it was Eric Thomas, it was Ray Lewis, and those are the three that are really sticking out to me right now. And And I heard something in that van that changed my life forever. And it was the 5 people that you surround yourself with are what you're going to turn into.
Absolutely.
And I looked around that van, and I saw a lot of kids from all over the country, all over America, from Detroit, from Baltimore, from Philadelphia, from Minnesota. And I looked around, and I saw maybe one other guy that really wanted to stop using drugs as much as I wanted to stop using drugs. Everyone else in that van, maybe they were facing legal consequences like I was 3 years earlier. I wasn't quite ready. Maybe their parents finally kicked them out, and they had nowhere else to go. They were homeless. Their jobs, they weren't there because they wanted to stop. They were there because they had no other choice of being there. So I looked around that van, and I realized very quickly that I needed to surround myself with people that knew more than me, people that had time, people that had something to offer me.
Exactly.
And that's when I really started seeking out mentors. Okay. And so I learned the one thing I really took from treatment was this Alpha Series program, and it's the Solomon syndrome, right? So we're constantly stuck in the Solomon syndrome, which is I'll be okay if, how many people say I'll be okay if I switch my job, I'll be okay if we buy this house, I'll be okay. And the truth is we're okay. We were born okay. All right. What we do is we set these false goals, and we think that these false goals are going to fix us. Right. So, I'll be okay if I get the new job. Okay. Well, I get the new job. Right. And I feel good for a period of time. Exactly. But after a while, somebody at the job bothers me. The job's not good enough. I'm not making enough money. And I have this vague sense of emptiness again that I had before I got the job. So, vague sense of emptiness, followed by deficit motivation. Like I said, somebody bothers me, somebody yells at me. And then, that's when I relapse. So as long as I keep trying to fix myself with outside things, that's when my life changes. False goal, deficit motivation, vague sense of emptiness, followed by relapse. And so all those years of my life, I was trying to fix myself with outside stuff. And I didn't realize that, God created me okay. I was born on this earth okay. It's our social surroundings and social conditionings that beat us down. And then not only that, let's see, there was the Solomon syndrome, and then we have this self-talk, right? So we think thousands of thoughts a day, right? Only 10% of those thoughts do we speak. The other 90% of those thoughts is internal self-talk. 80% of that 90% is negative self-talk. Exactly. So I beat myself down all day, thinking about how I could have done my job better, thinking about how I should lose weight, thinking about, I could think about something that I did 10 years ago, and it'll bother me. It'll irk me. So, and I especially think as people that deal with addiction, I feel like maybe our inner self-talk might be a little bit louder. I truly think addiction is a lot more mental health than people really believe or understand. So I know personally I have really loud inner self negative talk. So I need to condition myself with positivity, which is the other thing that I heard Les Brown tell me in those motivational tapes, which was what I do in the first 20 minutes of my day affects the rest of my day because of our subconscious and how it works. So when I roll over in the morning and I turn on Les Brown or Eric Thomas or Todd Special, a good friend of mine, and I listen to that stuff, I set the course of the rest of my day for positivity. I wake up, I get myself out of bed. My friend Todd, he writes these motivational posts, and Todd tags me in them every single day. So every single day at 6:30 in the morning, Eastern Standard Time, Todd wakes up and he makes this post, and then I wake up to an alert and I read it, and I read it every day. And that, that's the stuff that changes my internal self-talk and makes me start my day realizing that it's not true. What I think about myself isn't the truth. And I'll be honest and I'll be candid. My life has changed significantly in the last 2 years since I put down the needle. And I think something that needs to be talked about in this motivational space is we set these goals,
Yep.
right? We have to have goals because, like, as Les Brown says, hope in the future gives you power in the present, right?
Yep.
Well, I set some goals 2 years ago, and I hit all my goals,
Okay.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So I reached a place where I got very complacent. I
Mm-hmm.
got everything that I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So I stopped doing the stuff that I needed to do as far as, you know, every single day listening to motivational stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I found myself in a place where I couldn't even think about what I wanted to do next.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know what was wrong. I didn't know what was wrong until my girlfriend pointed out to me. She was like, when was the last time you watched a motivational video in the morning? And I was like a month ago. And she's like, well, when I met you, you listened to that every morning. Like, what changed? And I was like, stuff got good, you know? And so I really myself had to get back to the basics of what got me to where I am.
Mm-hmm.
You know, motivation got me here. And I'm so glad, you know, life isn't just an up, it's up and down and it's up and down. And the quicker people can realize that, you know, you know, how many famous celebrities have committed suicide recently?
Yep.
You know what I mean? So just because you're on the outside, everything is successful. What's going on the inside? You know, and for me, you know, I don't ever want to look weak. I don't want anybody to ever see me struggling. But if I can't talk about my struggles openly with my friends like you, then what am I doing? Because the truth is, somebody else out there is struggling.
Exactly.
You know, so people can't just talk about how everything's great. You know, the rain. What does Rocky say in that movie? It's not all sunshine and rainbows.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not. Life is hard. Life's going to hit you in the mouth.
Yeah.
And what are you going to do? You know, and so that's something that I had to recognize as of late, is that I needed to get back to what got me to, you know, going from living in a halfway house to traveling, you know, all over the country this year. Since January, I've been to, I don't know, Detroit, Houston, Texas, Rhode Island, Florida, all over Florida, up and down the East Coast, you know, and I got there by hard work, by setting goals, by writing my goals down on paper and going after it. And since I recommitted to motivation and recommitted to my recovery and all that, all of a sudden God unlocked my next year's plan. And with pen and paper, I was able to sit there and Farookh, I'm telling you, I was in a block. I tried doing this a month ago. I tried sitting down and writing and I just couldn't I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I made this decision to turn my will back over to God, and just like that, it came. And I have a new set of goals, and I know where I want to be next year, and I feel good again. You know, I'm happy today, and it's awesome because, you know, our struggles are what we need to, you know, we grow from times of adversity. So, you know, that 2 or 3 month little depression that I hit recently, that was exactly what I needed to check me right here and remind me where I am and what I need to do to continue to be successful. You know, we have a choice in this world. We could go left or we could go right. We could sit there and wallow in our sorries and do the woe is me and point the finger at everybody else, right? Yeah. Everybody else, you know, they did this to me, they did that to me, and you know, think that the world revolves around us and our feelings, and it's not. The world is the universe is a very interesting thing. You know, I don't think you could really explain the universe, but when you connect to it and you connect on that spiritual level, it's really, and you tap into that power, it's an amazing thing.
Wow, that's really strong story that you have. Philip, the first time that we met was at the Les Brown certification program, and you were there in the reception. It's what made you stand there? Because you took the initiative to be there and help the guests coming in. So how much did Les Brown change your life, the Philip that you are today? And what is the legacy that you carry from Les Brown? Because you learned something from him and you are taking that to the next level. So what do you do these days to help somebody else?
So if we could just start with how I ended up at the Les Brown Institute, that would be great.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I ended up there on a coin flip. So I have a very quick way of talking to God when I'm blocked off from God. And if I don't know the answer, I just flip a coin.
Okay.
And that's the quickest way that I can make that God can make a decision that's not mine, right? Because typically in my life, the decisions I make aren't good. So, you know, when God helps guide me, so I was gonna go somewhere, and I flipped a coin, and the coin said, "Nah, don't go there." So I showed up at my job, and and I'm at my job, and I'm walking up, and I work at Amethyst Recovery Center, and out comes a guy in a wheelchair named Jonathan Nolan.
Oh, I know him.
So yeah, so our friend Jonathan comes running out, comes wheeling out of Amethyst, and he just ran a group for our clients. And one of my clients, now at that time I'm running motivational groups, so one of my clients came out and introduced me to Jonathan, and he had said, you know, this is the guy Phil I told you about. So me and Jonathan start talking. I have no idea about the Institute. We're just talking about motivation. And he says, do you listen to Les Brown? And I said, yeah, I listen to him every morning. And he said, I was just with him last week. And I was like, what do you mean with him last week? Like, this guy exists in YouTube. Like, you know, like, I didn't even know where he was from. I didn't know that he was so close to me in Florida. And he said, yeah, you know, I just joined this institute, this Les Brown Institute. Oh, no, you know, I worked at the Les Brown Institute. So at this point in my life, I had just moved out of a halfway house. I had about 6 months sober. I'm just getting my life back together after 7 years of hardcore drug addiction. And so I called my mom that night, and I said, listen, I ran into this guy, and, you know, he knows Les Brown, and there's this institute, and by next year, I'm going to have the money to join. And my mom says to me, Phil, I didn't tell you this, but we sold the house, the Line Road house that she had been renting out. And I just got the check this week. So tell them to call me, and I'll pay for it. And I was like, no way. I'm like, I need to make amends. I need to pay you back for all the money that I've taken from you over the years. And she said, Phil, I've given you a lot of money for a lot of stupid things over the years in your active addiction. And I said, yeah, you're right. And she said, I want you to do this. So I talked it over with some people I trust, and some people some of my mentors said, yeah, you should absolutely do it. So my mom helped me get into the Institute. And I went to this first live training, and it was a smaller one. And it was at the actual Institute. It wasn't at the Deerfield Hilton. And I met, through the networking group that they have, the online, the trainings and all that. I started talking with Todd Special. And this is how I met Todd. I messaged him one night. They were doing these accountability groups, and he looked like somebody I would mesh with on his profile picture. So I just messaged him, and we started talking. And so we had been talking for a couple of weeks before the training. So when I saw him in the room, I went right up to him, and we sat, and he was part of my table talk. And that was my first experience. And then a month or two later is when we had the actual live training, the 3-day certification. And for the first time, I grew up this whole time with a fear of holding a microphone. Because when I hear myself talk through a microphone, I automatically quiet up, So what was really amazing about the Institute is it was 150, 200 people that were just as scared as I was to get up on that stage and hold that microphone. And so, some people choked up, they couldn't even talk, and people are giving rounds of applause and encouragement. And you've been there, the atmosphere, it's just, you come out of there just up, So I got on stage and I spoke the first time, and I did good, and then we did it more, and we did these table talks, and I got used to talking. So I went through that first certification, and that's when I really started going out and speaking more at detoxes, and I learned a lot there. I learned how to tell my story. I learned that I gotta get people to laugh, right? I'm giving some inside information. Maybe Les might be mad, but right before I make a point, I got to make people laugh so it clears their brain and they're ready to hear my point. I learned a lot of insider tips, and so I began this goal of I wanted to go back to my school and speak, and I wanted to get into the high schools, and I wanted to talk about addiction and this physical allergy that I found out that I had, and so I went back. I went back to my high school, and my wrestling coach, Coach Nooch, he brought me into his health class as a speaker, and it was 4 classes, block scheduling, and they were an hour and 20 minutes. So I had to be up there for an hour and 20 minutes. So the first one wasn't that good. I'll be honest. The second one was better. By the third one, I had it down. And I had to do it 2 days in a row, so I had to do 8 classes. So I did the first day, and then on the second day, my coach says, I think we should go live on Facebook.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, all right, let me do the first one and see how I feel. So we did the first one, and by the second one, I was like, all right, let's go live. So we went live on Facebook, and it was an hour and 20 minutes, and it blew up. It blew up. I mean, when I got off and my mom handed me the phone and I went to cut off the feed, I had like 120 live viewers, and I was like, "What is this?" You know, like I watch people's live videos. It says like 7 or 8. You know what I mean? I was like 120 people. Holy crap! And by the end of the week, it had like 40,000 views, and it had been shared like 300 times, and another school reached out, and then another school reached out. So I went into 2 or 3 more schools, and then I ended up back down at the next certification. I had gotten really tight with some of the people. I had gotten very close to Les, and they had asked me if I wanted to be involved in helping run the event, helping do the operations end of it. And I was very interested in that. I took a lot out of Eric Stoller's event planning. Stu Eisenberg, who was the operations director at the time, I learned so much about event planning just by hanging out with those two. So when they asked me if I wanted to be a part of it, I said, yes, absolutely. Because this is lifelong knowledge, you know. This is you learn by getting thrown into it, and so that was a really awesome experience. They asked me to be less to security that day, and TQ, our friend TQ, took that video of me and my girlfriend Xiomara walking Les through the back, and it was a really awesome experience. And then I went back to New Jersey. I went to a conference, and I met a guy named Michael DeLeon, who runs the Steered Straight program. And they go into prisons, and they go into jails, and they go into schools. And now, when I started this venture, you know, I had known who this guy was. You know, he's up here. So in my head, I figured, all right, there's Michael DeLeon, but he can't be everywhere. So whatever he can't do, I'll do the rest. You know what I mean? And so I run into Michael DeLeon at this conference, and we talked for a little bit, and you know, and that night I sent him that live video of me at school. And the next day at the conference, he said, you know, would you be interested in joining Steered Straight? And I tried to not let my jaw hit the floor in front of him. You know, I was like, yeah, that sounds cool. That's, and inside I'm like, yes. So Michael asked me to join Steered Straight, and he brought me to the first school, and he helped me out with my slideshow presentation because kids are very visual. And so he helped me with the progression of my story and pulling my pictures and the slideshow, and he really helped polish me in that end of it. And so, you know, mentors is what I really got out of the Institute. Aside from learning how to speak and tell my story and meeting Les, I got thrown into a room full of people like you, like Todd, like Antonio, and these are all people that are trying to change the world, and so now all of a sudden I have this Rolodex of friends all over the country and all over the world that I talk to. Rich Fontaine, you know, Antonio Smith, and I could call my friends and you know, Todd just asked me this week to go down to Tampa for the the July 12th event in Tampa, and help him out there, you know. And this is where getting thrown into that operationals end because of Eric Stoller and Stu Eisenberg and them asking me to be a part of it, you know, I've learned enough that now Todd could utilize me at his event. So, you know, practical experience is what I got out of the Institute, and some really awesome friends that are trying to change the world. And it goes right back to the 5 people that I surround myself with. So because I surrounded myself with positive, motivational people that are trying to change the world, now I'm a part of that movement. And these powerful friends that I have, they bring me up, right? So when I was in that depression the last couple of months, and I really wasn't sure, I was doubting my abilities, and I don't know if you can relate. Do you ever hit that self-doubt, and you question what you're doing?
It happens to everybody. It happens to everybody.
So when I was in that space, though, the one thing that kept pulling me out of it was, thinking about who my friends were. And successful people surround themselves with winners. And I have a lot of winners in my corner now. And that's really what made me remember, you're a winner. You're surrounded by winners. Like, winners don't surround themselves with losers. Exactly. You know what I mean? So just looking through my phone and picking up and calling Todd or calling Antonio, that's the stuff that pulled me out of myself. So you're gonna, especially if we give a lot of ourselves, especially at my job. I'm on the phone with people that have relapsed. I'm on the phone with moms that are, their kids are on the street, they're homeless, they don't, and so I give a lot of myself out. And if I don't take the time to fill my cup up with whatever my self-care needs to be, whether it needs to be meetings, which I'm jumping back into, whether it needs to be my motivation, phone calls, working out, which I've been terrible with, but I need to recommit myself to. This weekend specifically, I'm shutting my phone off and I'm going camping with my girlfriend, and that's it. I'm going into the woods to just be with nature, and that's the stuff I need to do to stay grounded in myself. So just constantly recognizing where you're at with stuff. Just because we're motivators and we're trying to help it doesn't mean that we don't hit funks. And if you ask some of the strongest people in the world, I'm sure they'll tell you, just look at the news. Kate Spade, Anthony Bourdain, the list goes on. Spencer from Lincoln Park, a lot of successful people that, we really are in the midst of a mental health crisis in our country. And I don't really know if enough people are talking about it or enough people are recognizing it. But, on the outside, everything could look great, but on the inside, people might not be all there. And I think that's why what the work we're trying to do is so important. And this motivational space. And I really wish schools would implement motivation and mentoring. They're not doing it. I wish more treatment centers in America would implement motivation and more motivational modalities. This truly is an important field to be in. And I think now more than ever in this country is it needed. We're so social media driven. And if I wake up in the morning and I turn on Facebook, if you've looked at Facebook the last week, it's just been nothing but negativity. One side of the political spectrum, and they're just going at it. My news feed is it's just all politics right now, and it's just negative. None of it is positive. People are arguing with each other. It feels like our country and our world is just, everyone just wants to argue with each other, and so I really need to, step away from that and try and introduce motivation to more people. We all need to do it. It's really heartbreaking to see where social media is right now. And there's so many people out there like us that are trying to motivate. There's so many motivational videos, and I'm not seeing any of it come across my news feed. You really have to seek it out. And getting some type of platform out there that's going to really push motivation is something that I really think needs to happen very soon.
Wow. Philip, before we wind up, what are the 3 things that you would like the youngsters to know if they are going through the situation that you were many years back? What are the 3 simple, straight points?
So for people in addiction?
It could be addiction. It could be they have hit the ground zero.
All right. Reaching out for help isn't a weakness.
And that's something which Les Brown always says, that if you are in trouble, look for somebody who can help you. And that's exactly what you did with your coach. When you were hitting the ground zero, you called your coach.
The hardest thing for me to do is to ask for help. Even now, is
that an ego that stops us?
I think it absolutely is, because I have no problem helping other people, right? I have no problem being the hero and I'll help, you know what I mean? Meanwhile, I need help myself. So I think it absolutely is an ego thing. And you got to break it, So asking for help when you need help. What I hate hearing is I know. People that know everything. You know, I learned this wrestling is that there's always somebody out there tougher than you. There's always somebody out there that could beat you. And taking that and putting it into the real world, there's always somebody out there that knows more than you or could teach you. You know, I have my strengths, other people have their strengths. So constantly keeping some room in your cup, you know, not having a full cup. I think that's
exactly what Bruce Lee said. You got to keep your cup empty if you have to learn something new.
Yep. And last, you know, you don't need to struggle. I mean, we all go through it, but I mean, I see so many people that live in a constant state of depression and struggle, and they always point the finger at everybody else and refuse to look at themselves. And the biggest thing that I learned is that all of my problems are of my own making. Every problem I've ever had has been based on a decision based on self. So I make a decision for my greater good that puts me in a later position of harm. So if I could turn my attention to others and helping other people, I build myself up. So from holding the door, I mean, nothing bothers me more than when I'm sitting at a store and like there's like a little kid and he's like short on change and he's about to go put his chips back. You know what I mean? And there's like 5 grown adults there. You know what I mean? Like, dude, give the kid a couple of bucks to get what he needs. You know what I mean? Just being selfless, helping other people, and just doing something without expectation of return. That's the best thing I could do for myself. You know, nothing makes me feel better than helping somebody else grow. You know, yeah, just wanting to see people grow. Because if we do that, if we grow together, you know, there's no stopping this world. Something I see too much of is, you know, people want to see you do well, but not better than them. Right. So, you know, and it's so frustrating to see because you'll make friends with people and they'll be like, yeah. And then you start getting successful and you start pulling yourself out and they're mad. They're mad that they're stuck with, and all of a sudden they're mad at you. And it's just like, I feel bad for those people. You know, I pray for those people. Because I've been there. I've been jealous. I've been full of self-hate so much that I hate you for doing well. And you know, just succeeding and wanting others to succeed. That's where it's at, you know. That's it.
Wow. Philip, thank you very much for your time. Thanks a lot. Ladies and gentlemen, Philip O'Hara.